Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow. Good morning. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. My name is David Stevenson. I'm Basil's co-host and his interpreter also, as Basil, as you know from previous shows, does not speak English. Basil speaks not Cantonese, the Cantonese dialect of Chinese, but he speaks Catanese, which is his own special version of Cantonese. And a note of reflection on that. Basil is also can be found on Facebook. Basil BuddhaCat is on Facebook, and also Basil blogs pretty regularly on three forums. One of them is the Washington Post. Second one being Newsmax, which Basil describes as being, in his terms, a right-wing Republican rag, and with the emphasis on right-wing rather than on Republican, and also on Conservative Byte, and that's B-Y-T-E, Conservative Byte. So if you want to gather up some of Basil's opinings and his conversations with folks, and Basil is careful to note that he does not go on any blogs in order to either be a troll. He doesn't lurk. He doesn't watch in and laugh gleefully at other people's arguments. He's not a troll. He doesn't go in there to cause people alarm. He doesn't go in there to speak illy of the other people that are blogging there. He goes there to engage in honest discussion. He says he has a hard time sometimes engaging in honest discussion on both Newsmax and Conservative Byte. He's dismissed somewhat because he describes those two blogs as being somewhat of an echo chamber, in the sense that someone will post something which is generally derogatory towards President Obama, and then the next 6 or 8 people or 10 people that add into that discussion will basically say, "Yeah, you're right," and then add a little bit more in, and they do a lot of I think it's safe to say ganging up. Yeah, Basil, that's perhaps a fair term. Ganging up on the notions the notions that are popular amongst some of these folks, that number one, that President Obama is not an American, that he was somehow born in Kenya, and somehow there's a conspiracy that got him in as a native of Hawaii. That the notion also is thrown out there that he's a socialist, a communist, a number of other things. Okay, yeah, Basil also wants to note that the historical side of him has done a lot of investigation into past administrations, into past presidents. Basil's, of course, quite enamored of President Lincoln, who Basil describes as a good and fair prototype for the kind of president that President Barack Obama has been, in the sense that Lincoln was very inclined toward consensus building, that he sometimes angered the folks that considered themselves to be his base, if you will. They didn't use the word back then, but in fact, Basil notes that in his readings he's found that a newspaper publisher named Horace Greeley, a very popular, very well-known newspaper publisher, and a very strong abolitionist prior to and during the American Civil War, the war between the states, as it's called, that Horace Greeley sent a very scathing letter to President Lincoln, in 1862. Was it 1862? Yeah, Basil says he thinks it was 1862. A scathing letter to President Lincoln complaining about how Lincoln had not been strong enough in terms of pushing for the abolition of slavery. And he complained that basically that the abolitionists were the base. They were the ones that got Lincoln elected. They were his margin of victory. And he wasn't returning to them what they had elected him to do. Very similar to like a lot of people have done in complaining about President Obama not being strong enough on some issues and some important issues. Most recently, habeas corpus. Before that, ending Iraq without becoming entrenched into Afghanistan. Although it's well noted that Basil that President Obama, when he was campaigning, said very clearly that he would change the focus under his presidency from a focus on Iraq to a focus on Afghanistan. And that's exactly what he did. Now, of course, a lot of folks since then, as he's been in office almost 3 years now, it'll be 3 years, it's actually been 3 years as of January 21st. He's given it his best shot with making it work in Afghanistan, and a lot of people are thinking that it's maybe time to end the involvement there also, as we've ended the direct military involvement in Iraq. A lot of folks also believe that leaving behind and keeping a very strong military presence in Iraq in the Green Zone in Baghdad, what was called the Emerald City when it was built because of the incredible price tag involved in it. So at any rate, so getting back to the discussion about Abraham Lincoln, Basil notes that Abraham Lincoln wrote back to Horace Greeley and said to him, look, my job as President of the United States is to preserve and protect the Union, to get the Union back as one, to get it back as a sovereign nation, one single sovereign nation with multiple states. My job is to preserve and protect the Union, even if that includes keeping slavery, even if that includes abolishing slavery entirely, or anything in between. That he was opposed to slavery personally, but that wasn't that wasn't a deal breaker in terms of getting the states back together. He wanted to reunite the southern states with the northern states. And, okay, yep. Basil wants to add that in historical perspective, he almost wishes, no, he says he wishes, that back when the Civil War, when the southern states seceded from the Union, that our government in Washington had said to them, I want to make sure I get this right, that our government had said to them, basically, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. Keep going, don't come back, be your own nation, that's fine. Because Basil well notes that since then, throughout the rest of American history since then, that southern states have been a thorn in the side of everything that America stands for. Everything they accepted blacks as being human beings post Civil War, but they did everything in their power as state governments, from the governor down to the state legislature, to keep blacks from voting in elections, to keep them from owning land, to keep them from even so far as sitting where they wanted to on public transportation. And we know the story of Rosa Parks and the important civil rights movement that began back in the 1960s, or actually late 1950s, when President Eisenhower was president, but didn't really fully blossom until John Kennedy became president, and Bobby Kennedy was the Attorney General under his brother. So Basil feels like basically if that block of southern states wanted to leave the Union again, he would say, go ahead. Okay, point well taken. At any rate, so we're going to get Rick Santorum back on the phone, And I anticipate also that we'll probably be getting some, make sure the phone is locked, it's locked in and we're ready to go, that they're locked in, that we're going to get some call-ins. So, Senator Santorum, you're still there? Okay, okay. I'm going to take this caller in first, then we'll get back and talk with you. Basil BuddhaCat presents. Okay, we have Mitt Romney on the phone again. Now, Mr. Romney, we didn't get a chance to finish discussing your remarks the other day about the poor and the rich basically being covered and not having any more needs. Now, I don't understand exactly where you're coming from in that, and Soledad O'Brien from CNN, who was in that discussion with you, was somewhat taken aback by what you were actually getting at when you said that. Now we know the rich have they have everything in place that they need. They're pretty well taken care of, certainly by dint of their own working the system in a positive way, but also in terms of their influence in Washington and in the state capitals, and their wealth. The laws seem to be tilted toward them. Tax codes make it so that, like yourself, they pay a lower tax rate than middle-class individuals, and that's what I'm getting at. Ultimately, is what's happening to our middle class? It seems like rather than middle-class folks having the opportunity to become wealthy in their own right or to become better off, it seems like more and more of them are actually joining the ranks of the poor. Now, okay, he says, former Governor Romney says that that's basically what he was getting at. But now, Governor Romney, let's speak specifically to the health care bill, which you were part of in Massachusetts, which has been in place now for a number of years, and Massachusetts has the highest rate of people who are insured, who have health insurance, of any state in the country. I think it comes in at about 97%, and that's not 100%, but it's pretty close to it. Now, you seem to have distanced yourself from that health care bill after the fact, while being critical of President Obama's health care bill, which passed through the House and the Senate 2 years ago, and has just now begun to be being implemented on a national level. We're starting to see some of the details coming into play as the bill was written, for things to happen over a period of time rather than immediately. What about the middle class, Governor Romney? Governor Romney says he believes in the system. He believes that in America, hold on. Keep going. Yep. He believes that in America, folks in the middle class have every opportunity to take advantage of what's available to become rich, to become wealthy, to make it, and he sees no problem or nothing standing in the way of that happening. Now, Governor Romney. Now we know that this is not something that began 3 years ago, or even began almost 4 years ago when the stock market meltdown took place in August of 2008, right during the 2008 presidential campaign between John McCain and Barack Obama. But it happened long before then, and we saw many people falling off, not having any kind of health care coverage, and many foreclosures, millions of foreclosures taking place, and bankruptcies taking place because of health care related emergencies and disasters that happen to American families. So I don't understand, and the audience, I'm sure, in Basil certainly would like to know, why you believe that your health care plan in Massachusetts didn't well serve the people of Massachusetts. Hold on. Okay, Basil wants to add in another question. Basil says that, you're very Governor Romney, you're very deserving of the complaints from all directions in your party, as well as outside your party, of being on pretty much every side of every issue at one time or another. Okay, and now I understand you don't want to address that. You think that's unfair criticism. But let me get back with Senator Santorum and Basil and continue our discussion. Thanks for calling. Okay. Senator Santorum, did you hear that, the conversation with former Governor Romney? Okay, yeah. Senator Santorum says he believes that most everything that's wrong with Washington is because there's too much government. He says that he believes that things like health care and things like everything addressing the needs of people that are in poverty and also in the middle class also can be addressed through religious organizations and nonprofits. Okay, now that begs the question, though, Senator Santorum. That begs the question that you've been involved in a nonprofit organization, and there's some knocks against that nonprofit, and they're not exclusive to your nonprofit organization, but are leveled at a lot of nonprofit organizations, including some of the big ones, the American Cancer Society, Susan Komen Breast Foundation, Red Cross, where at one point the Red Cross was paying Elizabeth Dole, wife of former Senator Bob Dole, a huge salary and benefits and bonuses, where a lot of the money was going towards those people that were actually involved in running the organization, rather than going to direct care towards those who they had advocated for and whom they wanted to be a part of helping out. Now here in Connecticut, in Westport, there's that type of criticism has from time to time also been leveled at Save the Children, which where a smaller portion than people would like to see, a smaller portion of the donations to Save the Children actually go to helping people out, helping kids out, helping their families out around the world. And okay, yep, I understand that. Okay, yes. Oh, hold on. Basil wants to add something. Basil says that on a local level, that non-religious nonprofits, and Basil wants me to point out particularly here in Danbury, DAWS, the Danbury Animal Welfare Society, which is where Basil's housemate Lilith was adopted from, that their salaries are a tiny, tiny piece of the action, a very small portion of money that's donated. That most of the money, the vast majority of the money that's donated toward Danbury Animal Welfare Society, the vast majority goes toward actually taking care of animals and finding homes for animals, for dogs and cats particularly. And they have a wonderful staff of volunteers that spend a few hours each week. And Basil wants people to know that they should contact Danbury Animal Welfare Society, even if they're unable to adopt a pet. If they can go in there a few hours a week and spend a little time with an animal or two, walk a dog, pet a cat, spend a little time keeping those animals spiritually feeling good until they're able to be adopted, that Basil thinks that that's the type of nonprofit that he would prefer that people donate not just their money, but more importantly, their time to. And of course, if you can adopt a dog or a cat, Basil says that's marvelous. That he wants people to stay away from what are described as puppy mills and kitty mills, folks that breed animals and then sell them for what seems like quite a bit of money. That people shouldn't be breeding animals when there are already animals that already too many animals to find homes for already, that dogs and cats, and Basil, of course, wants people to know that that particularly if you're thinking about cats, that your best choice is, okay, well, fair enough. Your best choice would be to adopt a Maine Coon. Basil says that's the cat. That is, as Basil says, Maine Coons are the cat's whiskers, he says. Okay, fair enough. So at any rate, so Basil says you should investigate any nonprofit that you're deciding to give to. And of course, we all get bombarded periodically with phone calls from organizations that they claim to be sometimes things that they're not, and sometimes aren't even real organizations. That Basil says you should investigate before donating time or money to any group. You should investigate them and get a strong feeling of confidence that they're in fact doing what they say they're going to do, and that they're actually doing good and spending their money and their resources where it matters most, on the children, on the dogs and cats, on the tigers, on anything and any and all groups of whatever they're doing, on the families of killed police officers, firefighters, all these different organizations, veterans organizations. Basil thinks it's important to note that veterans organizations, as long as you've got one which is actually spending money where they say they're going to spend it and where their intentions are to spend it, and don't have a lot of high-paid executives getting large salaries in order to represent represent that nonprofit. So yeah, okay. Let me get Basil. I need to get back on the phone with Senator Santorum. Now, Senator Santorum, what's this notion about people falling in between the cracks and many people who used to be considered economically middle class folks that made a decent salary, had a nice home to come home to, a decent home to come home to, had transportation to and from work, usually by means of a car, but sometimes by train or other means. A lot of them have joined the ranks of the poor. Do you feel like there might be more that religious organizations can do? And if so, tell us a little bit about what they can do. Okay, yeah. Senator Santorum says that he feels like, as he noted before, that religious organizations are better equipped and nonprofits are better equipped. He doesn't want to speak directly to the question about the nonprofit that he was involved in. He says that sometimes things happen and when organizations don't have enough oversight from within, then there can be problems, and that's sometimes what happens. He's not speaking about his own the nonprofit specifically, but he thinks it is important for them to be not only self-policing, but to have people that donate to them keep a close eye on where their money's going and vet them out thoroughly. Now Senator Santorum, along those lines, why is it that government, which in fact probably has a lot more internal oversight than nonprofits, why then is government not best suited to meet the needs of the needy, of the poor, of middle class, to make sure that America has what we would call a level playing field where everybody has an equal chance? Why would that not be a fair idea? And a second part to the question, why would the wealthiest Americans and along with them corporate America not pay a higher share of the cost of taking care of not just poor but middle class people who pay apparently a disproportionate amount of well, in the case of the middle class, they pay a disproportionate amount in terms of federal taxes, but everybody is under the same rules as far as property taxes, for instance, local property taxes. Everybody's under the same rules in terms of sales tax, federal or state sales tax. Everybody pays the same percentage in terms of sales tax. So why would it not be fair that the wealthiest among us pay a little bit more in order to take care of, in order to give the government enough money to recycle it back through organizations? He says he just doesn't see that as being the case. He just doesn't see the federal government as being good at that. Now, I have to interject, and Basil's whiskers are twitching, so I know he wants to also. I'm going to let Basil speak on this one. Okay, Basil. Okay, Senator Santorum. Basil says that if you compare Medicare, straight up compare Medicare to for-profit institutions like HMOs, that Medicare, in fact, has a very negligible overhead. That means salaries. There's no profit share. There's no profits going anywhere. There's no money being paid to stockholders and shareholders. You don't have inordinate amount of salaries. Medicare apparently, in fact, has about a 2% overhead. That's to say, it's not advertising. It doesn't need to advertise. It's out there. It's a government organization. It's government run. It's actually a government run, single payer, not for profit. Just like the healthcare reform package that President Obama was originally looking for. But if Medicare has a 2% overhead, then why would you want HMOs to remain in business, where HMOs, their overhead, that's to say their salaries, advertising dollars, profits and dividends to stockholders and shareholders, adds up to over 30%. Well, that threw him for a loop. Okay. He says he just doesn't believe in principle on government involvement in health care or pretty much anything. He thinks everything should be done. Okay, he says everything should be done by not-for-profits and religious organizations. Okay, very much for joining us. My name is David Stevenson, Basil's co-host. Of course, we have Basil BuddhaCat as the host of the show, and our guest last Friday and this morning, former Senator Rick Santorum from Pennsylvania. And again, our well wishes to you and your family and your daughter Bella. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Good night. Good day. They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.